Just a wee reminder of the descriptor that I gave when I set up this webinar tonight, when I was asked to do it, about eldership and worship. And what I said we would do tonight is we would have a chance to unpack some basic, yet often unexamined questions, consider some ideas as we look ahead, and be real about where we're at. First, to start with a word about being real. Reality. This webinar is an abnormal and suboptimal way for human beings to interact, but we're going to do the best we can. Reality. What we share tonight belongs to the particular moment we are in. Still in crisis, still reeling from an enormous and life-threatening disruption, still neither completely safe nor completely free to go where we wish or do as we please, still coping with the loss of control and a huge amount of uncertainty. In the midst of all this, we're going to think about worship. How is our worshipping in this now? How are we finding God? How is God finding us and coming to us and showing up for us in this now? What are we offering God in this now? Shall we take some time then to revisit some basic questions and see if exploring them helps us to feel our way into this now? What is worship? What is worship? It seems like a straightforward question, but maybe it's not so easy to define it, to say what it is. So first, a wee language lesson. 2 words we associate with them, with worship and liturgy, and the roots of their meanings. We don't use the word liturgy a lot in the Church of Scotland, but liturgy is the framework of worship. It's the things that we do, the actual words, the songs, the silences, the sacraments, all the bits and pieces that we actually do in worship. And liturgy means the work of the people. And the word worship itself comes from 2 words, worth and ship. We know what worth means, and the ship part is just like we would talk of a township. So worship and liturgy. So worship is the work people do in which we honour our Maker. It's that thing we do to affirm our trust in God. It's what we do to acknowledge God's holiness, to say, God, you're different from us. Worship is a communal set of practices, these things we do, practices which depend on the beliefs that we have about God, and practices that make real those beliefs. Worship makes the extraordinary claim. It takes God's presence as a given. Wow. Every time we worship, we're saying we believe we're in the presence of God. So worship is, in a way, facilitating the presence of God. Wow. When we worship, we're giving a gift to God. We're making an offering. And it's a gift that has integrity. It's not a second-hand or a second-best gift. It's something that's of our best, an offering, a labour of love, that sense of the work. the work we do to honor the importance of God in our lives. That's worship. So why do we do this thing? Why do we do this thing? We do it because we belong to a body. We're here as a body of people tonight, even though we're not actually physically together. We worship because our understanding of God is dependent on others. We can't discover everything about God all by ourselves. It's not for ourselves alone. We need each other. We need the cross-fertilization to learn from each other, to share our thoughts and our discoveries about God so that we can broaden and deepen our grasp of who God is, what God is like, what God is about, God's nature and activity. And we worship too because it feeds the deep hunger of our hearts. And because doing these worship practices together changes us and forms us. It shapes us in the story of Jesus specifically. It helps us to become more like Jesus. It helps us to grow to love what God loves. And we worship together because it's a defense against a kind of privatization of our faith, if you like. We don't want that. We're together in this. That's why we do it. So is it a necessary part of life then? Do we have to? Well, yes, we do. We do because we have to decide our ultimate allegiance. Who or what claims our ultimate loyalty? Worshipping puts that question in perspective. To participate in worship then is to be called back again and again and again to taking God as our most important source of inspiration. To keep entering into these repeated acts of worship liberates us from spending ourselves on things that are fallible. Spending ourselves, our time, our money, our energy on things other than God, who is the reliable one. So worshipping brings us back over and over and over again to be in a place of freedom and to live from that freedom. And God knows how easily we can get tangled up elsewhere. And what difference does it make to be physically gathered as we can't be tonight? Does that make a difference to be physically gathered? Well, God is community. We call God Father, Son, and Spirit, or Creator, Redeemer, Sustainer, these names that we have to try and describe God. And so God is community. And that's the same image in which we've been made. So we're community people. We're relational beings. Scientists have shown time and again that if a newborn baby does not receive quality eye contact and physical closeness with the body of another person, then that child's brain will not develop as it should. That's how important our physical closeness is. And of course, as the Bible will tell us, being gathered for worship fulfills a command of God, a command to praise God in the assembly of God's people. There's lots of these calls, especially in the book of Psalms, that we should come together, a command, praise God as the assembly of God's people. So it's pretty hard to fulfill that while we're apart. And I think we know that being together being in the same place at the same time, gives us a kind of embodied encouragement from each other. That when we have that real eye contact and we hear each other's laughter, we have the handshakes, the hugs, the sacraments, the shared silence, and the singing. Oh, the singing. These things matter as a source of encouragement to us. And also, being gathered together exposes us to the ways that other people respond in worship. We see what it's like for them. It's not just our experience, but we see how others are in that space. And it lets us share that. It lets us speak to God together, to witness together, to have a place to make decisions together. In each other's company, we discover that community is something that's more than the sum of its parts. I hope none of us needs convinced about any of this, especially not that it matters to be gathered in person for worship. So in the light of all that I've put to you so far, here's another question. How are things with the patterns and practices of worship that are most familiar to you? How effective are they? Do they do the things that worship is meant to do? Do they fulfill the things that worship is meant to fulfill? So think about your own congregation and the worship that you regularly take part in. And use what we've shared so far to reflect on it. Which of the things I've put to you ring true? There might be some that you question. There might be some you disagree with. That's all okay. What strengths do you see in how worship is done, how it's happening where you are? And where are you in the worshipping body you belong to? I'm going to give you a few minutes now. The 4 questions that we looked at and a summary of what I said are going to come up on 4 slides, just to recap what I've said. So as you read back over, you might want to give yourself a wee stretch and a wriggle, stand up if you need to, but just have a read over the summary of what I've said and think about how it speaks, or is at odds maybe, with worship as you know it and with how things are for you. Thanks, Susie. So friends, we're about to be going into our breakout rooms for about the next 20 minutes to let you do some talking. So the questions for your breakout groups. First of all, just what, if anything, has struck you from the questions and ideas explored so far? Just what has struck you? Anything you want to share with your group? And secondly, to reflect a bit on how the COVID crisis has affected your worshipping. And when I say your, I mean both your individually and your sense of that plural you, your congregation. And the three questions there are just suggestions for where you might take this. Might be to discuss things like, what have you felt able or unable to offer God in these days? What have you felt able or unable to receive from God? What have you learned or indeed unlearned about God? So I hope that sounds okay. Spend maybe about half of your time just what has struck you from the questions and ideas explored so far. And secondly, just reflect together on how the COVID crisis has affected, for better or worse, your sense of worshipping. Thank you. Enjoy your groups, and we will see you soon.